Awesome. Is there any questions that we want to go over today? Is there any parts of the system that you guys want to see? Okay, cool. So what we'll probably do today, if you guys are up for it until I start to get questions in, is we'll just kind of go over some parts of the system. I think that based off of the group that I see here, we could go over task templates if we want to. We could go over property tables. We could talk about smart blocks, just kind of depends. If anyone has any direct questions about any features on open to close or wants to see something more in depth built out from beginning to end, we can do that as well. Okay, awesome. So I think that what we'll do right now is I'll just probably talk about, oh, wonderful. Yay. Thank you guys for the questions. Alrighty, so we have a question about property triggers, but the second question from Lynn, would you please remind me why it's better to use the intake forms versus property history? I'm assuming you're in talking regards to the dashboard widgets. That one's a lot easier of a question to answer first, and then we can do a deep dive into property triggers after this. So it kind of depends when it comes to, what you like on your dashboard. Let's see. You mean a property. So when you say, why is it better to use the intake form versus property history, do you mean why is it better to use an intake form to enter in a property versus selecting new property? Is that what you were referring to? Oh, add a property? The main advantages to using the intake form is that the intake form is going to go ahead and use that conditional information that you've set up. Wonderful. Okay, cool. So the main use case for the intake form is that it's going to use that conditional information to apply the task templates, email templates, document templates to the property. So when we're going through and we're looking at our intake form, I know based off of the questions that we've built out that if I say yes to the following and I say no to the other questions, that I don't have to worry about things in regards to loan, survey, or inspection. They won't come onto that property because I've built out the conditional logic for it. When we're adding in just a new property, selecting new property and adding it in here, we're removing all of that logic, right? So it's not going to be using any logic to add in or not add in any sort of part of the property. Instead, you'd be adding either those task templates manually. You would use a property template to bring on task templates, document templates. And even with those property templates, it's a manual thing. So, we're going to a new property. I'll go ahead and just click on this one because I know it's empty. We're selecting this dropdown saying, apply, whoops, clicked on the wrong one. Well, we'll say apply property template. And then if there are, task templates on there, document templates on there that we don't need, we have to manually delete them. When we use the intake form, we're saying we want all of that to be taken care of without that sort of logic. So instead, we're relying on those triggers to fire that off. So here you can see, if there was intake submission triggers here or intake approval triggers, we'd see those triggers here. Let me see if I can grab a better example. Here we go. This is a better example. So here's those intake submissions. And the way that these work is these are built off of that logic. So because we said the seller disclosure is required equal to yes, we didn't meet those conditions. So we don't have to worry about seller disclosure information coming on. Does that answer your question? Lynn, let me know if there's any follow-ups on that. For property triggers, let's talk about it. So property triggers are awesome. I love them. I think that they're really exciting and they're a fun way to start building out your system. Whenever you start to think, okay, I think that I want to start building out property triggers, I've already signed up for the Scale account. I'm ready to go with this. I typically suggest starting. Okay, awesome. I typically suggest starting with like the beginning parts of your process because that's the easiest thing to convert. So we know that in the very beginning of our transactions that we're going to want to send out those opening emails, right? So we might build out a property trigger saying that if the buyer's contact roles on there, buyer's agent contact roles on there, listing agent contact roles on there, and let's say like the seller's on there, right? That it queues up an email and it gets that email ready to go right at the beginning of the transaction, instead of, having to check off a task to then review the emails to then send them out. So property triggers are a way to sort of sidestep that checking off the task and instead focusing directly on, because I've updated this data, I've gone through and I've kind of added them in. So I typically suggest, like I said, if you're making that transfer over, start with your beginning parts. Sarah, if you have a specific example of property triggers that you kind of want to look through, like, let me know. Like, are we wanting to see like how to build one with just form condition or conditions based off of like the fields? Are we wanting to see one based off of like file roles, or maybe based off of contacts, or kind of a combination of them? The more detail you give me, the better I can kind of go in and kind of build one out and kind of show you what that looks like. And then, so it looks like our next question is, I would like to have a document template come in with an intake form. Awesome, Wendy. So what we're going to do is we're going to head up to this 3-line icon, expand that view. Whenever we're making edits to the background, I like to have this particular view open because it makes it easier for me. We're going to head down to that hammer icon. We're going to go into templates. And then here we're going to go into our intake form templates, either buyer side, seller side, whatever template you have in there for your intake forms. We're going to select edit. Once we're in that particular intake form, we have a couple different options here. We're going to head down to our form triggers. Form triggers are going to be how you're going to be getting on those document templates, those task templates, the date template applied after that intake form has been submitted. So if we're talking about we want more fields to come on, we're looking at form conditions. If we want things to happen after it's been submitted, form triggers is where we're going to want to go. So depending on when you signed up for your account, you might have the pre-built account. So a lot of this might look really similar to what you've seen before. But here, if we click on sort triggers, we can see the list of different field sections. And then if I scroll down, we've got some task templates here at the bottom, as well as some document templates as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on trigger options, and then I'm going to scroll pretty far, almost to the bottom, just so that we can take a look at what a task trigger looks like. So again, if you have the pre-built account, this is already in here. You can take a look at these. So let's go ahead and go with septic, because I think that this is, the top one right here. So if we see here, it says underneath the trigger assets, add septic documents and add buyer septic task templates. So whenever we're talking about triggers or form triggers on the intake form, we can have it bring on more than just one type of template. It can bring on a document template. It can bring on a task template. If we click on this little template button here we can see here's those two templates that I just mentioned underneath the trigger assets. If I click on where it says choose templates, I can type in document, and then this is where I can add on more document templates if I need to. Okay. So this is if we're adding it to an existing trigger that's already there. Maybe we want to add on another version of these documents or another short version of the documents. We can also, like I said, add on task templates. If we see here, we've got task templates up at the top. If I continue to scroll through this list, we've got document templates, trigger templates, and then date templates. Now, typically with an intake form, you're going to have one date template that you're applying. So keep that in mind. And that's going to be the final trigger that's going to fire off. But here we can add any number of document templates that we want. Typically, when it comes to trigger assets, we like to say limit it to about 10, right? We don't want a super number amount of assets to come on, because sometimes that can make things load a little bit longer. And so if we limit it to 10, we can always create another trigger to bring on that information following that same logic. Now, I'm going to show you guys how to build it out. So this was just adding it onto an existing one. Let's talk about how to build out that trigger on that intake form and where we should move it at, right? So I'm going to go ahead and scroll up to the very, very top. Awesome. Here up at the top, we have this add trigger. We also have apply template. If you've created some intake form trigger templates, you can say apply template and apply an intake form trigger template. It just depends. I typically see people using the templates when they have, a huge number of states. Maybe they're taking care of like 4 or 5 states and they're doing a big build out and they want to be able to apply those without having to build them out on every single intake form. Sometimes I see people using that apply template here. What we're going to want to do is we're going to click on add trigger. Here underneath choose action, we can either choose form submitted by agent or form internally approved. It depends on what you guys want for this, right? If we say submitted by agent, that takes away the ability to edit the information before it's approved, okay? So if this is going to be a document template that may or may not come on and your TCs get to determine that, then we might want to go with internally, right? Because then your TCs will have the chance to update the fields depending on the field data that may or may not bring on that document template. If this is a document template that needs to come on anytime the agent or that intake form has information added to it, that's when we're going to want to go with form submitted. So in this example, I'll just go ahead and select form submitted. I already have a lot of form submitted ones, so I think that that'll be the easiest one. Under trigger functions, we're going to select add or remove template. This is how we're going to be able to say, do we want to bring on document templates, task templates, date templates, trigger templates? I'm going to go ahead and click on template and say add. When I add that in there, it's going to pop up our left screen from the right-hand side, and it's going to ask us what templates do we want to bring on. I'm going to just type in documents again and just grab a random one. Let's go ahead and go with buyer's brokerage documents. I think that that's fine for now. And we'll say add. When I add on a trigger here, it's automatically defaulting to bringing on that trigger, right? So we're making it, adding it on, we're bringing it into that property. We can also toggle that to say remove if we would like to. Now, typically when I say that you're building out your intake forms, always deal in positives. It's a lot easier to troubleshoot if you know that you're just worried about what is being added to your property versus what needs to be removed, okay? So when you first start out, stick with add, makes it a lot simpler. And then as you start to build your system more, you might find some cases where you do need to remove it. Maybe there's other circumstances that when this answer and this answer is answered, then it changes it. And I actually don't need these particular document templates, task templates, date template, whatever it is. I'll go ahead and select close. And now we have this trigger up here at the top. Any trigger that we create is going to come in automatically as turned off. If we want to turn it on, we can flip on this little switch. We could also click on the trigger options or options here to expand that trigger so we can kind of see what it is first. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on because it makes it a little bit easier for me to read. And I know that we're going to add in some conditional logic, make sure that this looks good. So Wendy, for the second part of this, we're going to want to click on add condition, and we're going to want to add on a condition. When does this need to come on? So let's say that this particular buyer brokerage documents only needs to come on when the client type is equal to buyer, right? So we only need it when the buyer is involved with this particular transaction. So under conditional type, we have the option to choose property field, file role, or contact role. Whenever we're building out triggers and it's on the form submitted side, keep in mind that we really only have the property fields to sort of build out the logic with, right? We don't yet quite have that property built out. So we might not have the contact roles or the files uploaded, but we'll definitely have that field data. So whenever you're talking about or thinking about building out your form conditions, try to keep in mind what information is already available on my property. Well, if it's at this form submitted, I really only have fields at that point. I don't necessarily have any documents uploaded. I don't necessarily have any contacts uploaded just yet. Here under choose fields, we have some more options. So this is going to be all of our fields. What fields are we going to use? Like I said, we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to choose contract client type in this example. Whenever you're dealing with very specific document templates like septic or HOA or inspection, I would definitely choose a field that's more matched to that, right? So if it's HOA, I would probably want to match it with the same question that I'm asking on my intake form. On my intake form, I know we're asking, is there an HOA? This is the question right here. So when I build out that form trigger to say, bring on my HOA documents, I want to use this same question here that when I say yes, that's when I want those documents to come on. Heading back over to that intake form, we're going to choose the operation. So I'm just going to keep it simple. And like I said, when you guys are starting to build out your system, I say keep it really simple and start with adding instead of removing. So I'm going to go ahead and say equal to, and then what I'm going to select is buyer. At this point now, we have this whole logic, this conditional field or this condition built out. We're going to select add, and it's going to add that condition here. We can add another one if we want to. If we continue to add conditions, it's going to add them as this and this condition needs to be met, not an or. So we'll go ahead and say close. So here we see that condition right here. I always like to add in details though, because if we click on sort triggers, right now it just says template. We don't know what that template is. We don't know if it's a document template, a task template. And so when it comes to organizing our fields, it can be a little cumbersome if we don't know what that template needs to do. To keep things simple and easy, I usually just highlight the trigger assets. If you're on a PC, you can use Control C to copy the name of it. If you're on a Mac, you can use Command C to copy it. We'll click into the details. And again, if you're on a PC, you can use Control V to paste it in there. If you're on a Mac, you can use Command V to paste it in there. And then we'll press Enter. If you guys remember, anytime it's purple, that means that we're still editing that field, right? So it hasn't saved yet. Anytime we press Enter and it goes from purple to gray, that means that field is saved. So now when I click on sort triggers, we're going to see that that particular trigger template has been saved. We see the naming convention of it. It looks great, but it's not quite in the right order. A lot of the time when I'm training people, I want you to bring in your fields first, your field sections, and then your templates. And the reason we suggest that is because this is going to fire off based off of what information is being brought onto the property. And some of this logic here these fields may not come on. And so, it kind of gets stuck in a loop, right? It goes, we need to see what the contract client type is, but is the contract client type added there? So I typically suggest we group all of our task templates, our document templates down at the bottom. So I'm just slowly but surely dragging it down there. So here we have it where our fields are up here at the top and our field sections. And then we have our task templates. You see how we've got this peach colored guy in the middle? If you guys are looking at your triggers and you're finding that things are running a little bit slower than they need to be, it might be because your triggers need to get resorted. Like I said, we do fields, then we do field sections, then we do task templates. All together, we want to group the green ones together, and then we want to group the peach ones together at the very bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this particular template and bring it down to the bottom. So this is an example of how your fields can look. I know we have a couple up here that do not fit that sort of, we've got an email, and then a template. I know that these are off because they're a slightly lighter color than the other field sections down here, the other triggers down here. Let me know if there was any follow-up to that one. I'm just going to really quickly scan to make sure. Okay, cool. Doesn't look like there's any follow-up questions to that one. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next question. If you guys have any follow-ups, you want to see that more, you want to see another example, please let me know. So the next question we have is, I need the option of having property triggers automatically execute when condition is met. Templates, text, and email. So can that option to have things automatically execute is not going to be an option just yet. I know that we're still kind of investigating and seeing how we can go about it. The reason that it's not going to be an option to have them automatically execute is because we're sort of looking at a matter of, what's the thing called? What happens if the template goes out to someone that it's not supposed to go out to, and we end up sending private details to a party member that didn't need it? Or what happens when we have an email template go out and it hasn't been edited and it needed to be edited, or party members needed to be added to it? So we'll still always have property triggers be able to be, reviewed before sent out. If you were looking for sort of some automation when it comes to email or text, you can incorporate some of those, task templates or task triggers to it. So let's say it's just a notification, right? We're just notifying someone, hey, your inspection's coming up today at this time, or your inspection's tomorrow at this time. You can create a task trigger that is automatic. So here we have the ability to make that automatic. But for now, property triggers are always going to be reviewed and queued up before sent out. Wendy, it says and property fields. I'm assuming you're talking about the intake form and we have the document triggers. I didn't very much touch on the document triggers. Oh, sorry. The property fields being brought on, but as you can see from our intake form, so I'm just toggling to that over again, going to form triggers. We do have some of those triggers as well. And a lot of those triggers is built out the same exact way, right? We're saying that we want a specific set of fields to come on, and then we're building out the logic for it. And then we're adding in the details for it. So it's still the same exact flow as what you would do with your document templates or adding on those particular triggers. But instead, when you select what kind of trigger type it is, again, we can say submitted by agent. We're either selecting a field. So if we wanted, to select 5, 6 fields, or we can say field section, and that would bring in the group of fields. So if you have your HOA field section you want to come on, you can have it come on that way. Let me know if you want to see how that's built out or how to add them onto it. Same exact kind of functionality as the document templates, but we can click on those things and show you if you need it. So just let me know. All right, so next we have Sarah. I have a trigger to send a reminder email if the HOA docs field is not X by the day before the deadline. It shows up in the trigger tab on the transaction, but not on the trigger Kanban page, and there's no red dot next to the trigger tab. So I missed a deadline. Okay, so basically when you were on that property, you could see that that trigger was due, but when you were looking at the Kanban view for the triggers, it didn't show that that trigger was ready to queue up. I'm assuming. I think that that's what I'm reading. Let me see. Because you have a follow-up as well with some more information. Let me read that. HOA task list is added if there's HOA and then removed once the field. Yeah, so actually that's a really good point, Sarah. I'm glad you brought that up. So if we're using Logic to bring on specific task templates or document templates, or bringing on different property triggers as well, and then we have another property trigger that might remove those fields, then yeah, the property triggers that are built out with those fields, they won't queue up, right? Because the field's been removed. That means that the property doesn't know that it needs to use that logic, right? So it doesn't meet the conditions. So that definitely could be it. I would love to see a Loom video of exactly where you're seeing, especially with there's no red dot next to the trigger tab. So are you referring that, are we talking about when we're looking at the property itself, you know, there was no red dot here. You didn't get a notification that triggers needed to queue up. Let me scroll and see if there's anything else. Oh, no worries. Okay. Yeah. And again, and I would love to see like a Loom video exactly of what's going on with that, you know, from beginning to end. It'd probably take a deeper dive. I would want to see what it is that you've built and how that looks before I could kind of triage exactly what's going on, because it could be, you know, it could be if the fields were removed, maybe that's why it didn't meet the conditions. And so it couldn't do that. It could also be that, you know, when we're looking at that trigger, I would want to see what conditions were specifically on it. And then, okay, so Ken, but if I have to check off a task, it's not automated. I understand what you're saying there with that. Like I said, the only way that you'd be able to get tasks or emails to go out without reviewing them is going to be if you checked off a task. That's the only way right now that we have communication being sent from open to close immediately. The reason that we don't have it that, you know, it meets the conditions and then it sends out without, you know, any sort of review is because of the type of information we're dealing with, right? We don't want anything that needs to be private sent out to the incorrect party members. We also don't want, you know, information that needed to go to specific party members not get sent to those party members. So that's the main reason why we don't have anything like that where we fill out a field, it's automatic. The tasks, I understand what you're saying by that it's not necessarily automated when it comes to checking off that task, but it does remove that ability to, I checked off the task, let me go up to the health bar, let me review the email, let me send. It does remove that sort of portion of it. So it doesn't make it, it makes it a lot faster of a solution to use tasks to send out emails, quote unquote, automatically, based off of sort of how we've built it out. All right. Our next question is there a way to trigger an automatic email to go out when we change the property listing price? We need to modify marketing. So it depends, Laura, on what account you're on. If you're on the scale account, you can build out a trigger that when the property listing price has been changed to X amount more or X amount less, that an email gets ready for queue. You'll want to review that email and then send it out. You could also possibly build out, you know, a set of tasks that come on when that information's changed. It kind of depends. I'd need to see what it is, because whenever we're dealing with values, right, like a listing price, whenever we say it's less than or more than, and then things need to change, we're talking about a lot of different variables, right? Because the housing market and the prices of houses change constantly. So I wouldn't recommend building a trigger based off of that. I would instead probably have a field that says, maybe listing price has been updated, or has listing price been increased or something like that, or listing price status. And you can either say it's increased, it's stayed the same, or it's decreased. And then based off of that, maybe you have some other emails queue up. If you say it's less than, then this comes up. If it's more than, then this comes up. Contract price in the pending transaction. Yeah, it's still the same logic, regardless. If we're dealing with those dollar amounts, I would most likely suggest that we instead create a field that has either it's gone up or it's gone down or it's stayed the same, versus, saying, if this value, and again, I'm going to go to a random property, the purchase amount value, this has changed to more or less, because this number could be anything. It could be 100K, it could be 500,000, it could be 2.5 million. And so I wouldn't feel comfortable with you guys building out triggers to say, well, if it's more than 500,000, I want this particular email, or if it's less than 500,000, I want this particular email. Instead, I would say, let's get a field, a status field that says, price increase, price drop, price stayed the same. Awesome. And then our next question is how to upload the documents from OTC into Skyslope. So in this particular account, I do not have a Skyslope integration. However, the integration between Skyslope and DocuSign is very similar. So I'm just going to go to this property here, and it kind of depends on what kind of property you've said it is in Skyslope. If you've said that, and I'm going to refer to my notes, because even I get stuck on this sometimes. I know that one of them, let me pull it up, search in my notes, Skyslope. Here we go. Okay. So when we're talking about selecting what type of, Skyslope, what is the word for it called? Whether it's a sale or a listing type, when we're selecting what kind it is, let me see if I can go to another property, kind of show you guys what that looks like. Is this one connected? Okay, cool. So here, when we say, export property, this is pushing the property from open to close out into another integration. It says .loop, pretend it says Skyslope. But when we choose which property and we say next, the next couple steps here where it says loop type, for Skyslope users, it'll say sale type or property type, and you'll be able to select between listing or sale. So unfortunately, if you select listing, there are some issues with uploading documents to a listing. So sending documents from open to close to Skyslope. This isn't necessarily something that we've put in place to stop it. This is based off of Skyslope and how they've set up their API and their integration. They made it difficult for anyone to be able to push documents over if it's considered a listing. So if you're having issues where you're trying to push documents over, it's not going over, what's going on, or why wouldn't it let me go push them over? It's most likely because that type needs to be changed to a sale type. Even if it's a listing, that's kind of the hard part, right? If it is a listing and you need to keep it as a listing, and you still need to push over documents, it's probably better to email those documents over to that particular Skyslope transaction in Skyslope versus doing it the other way. Now, if you have it set up as a sale, right, in Skyslope, and you make that connection, or you export it as a sale, or you link it to a property that's already a sale in Skyslope, when we're talking about sending over the documents, there's a couple different ways that we can do it. We can definitely click on, we have some buttons up here. Usually one of them says Skyslope. We can click on that Skyslope button, select the documents and push them over. We can also select the documents from here, go to options. And if we had Skyslope integration, we could select Skyslope and push them over from there. Let me see if I can go back over to that other one that's already connected to .loop. Kind of show you what that looks like, because the steps for pushing over documents looks exactly the same, whether it's Skyslope or DocuSign or even Brokerment. So if you're looking at this, just imagine different words. So here we have this document. We have it, a file has been uploaded. As long as we see that purple paperclip, we know that a file has been uploaded. When we click on that drop box here, we can go to options. Here we've got a couple of different options. We can export it. if we wanted to pull it out. But when we want to move that document over into DocuSign, we could also click on .loop documents. So over here, it would say Skyslope documents, click on that. And then here we'll see that two-way sync, whether we want to push documents over or whether we want to pull documents in. So this is saying, do we want to pull documents in? This is importing. If we wanted to push it over, let me see if I can find the specific button for it. I believe that it's going to be a matter of selecting them. Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong. Am I just not seeing it because the .loop integration isn't set up correctly? Nope.
Sorry, I was muted.
No, no worries.
I don't know. I'd have to look into that one a little bit further. Usually, if you expand on the specific placeholder that has a file.
Expand. Oop, is it going to let me do it?
So, like click on the arrow next to one of those ones that has a file. Does it give you anything? No.
We have these ones. Yeah, it says collapse file.
Well, so there's not a file. So click on that down arrow on one of the ones that have.
Oh,
okay.
here it is.
There we go.
There it is. I was like, wait a second, where is this? There we go. Oh, we connected Skyslope through OTC, but I do not see the Skyslope button in the menu. How do I add that? Thank you. No worries. So if you're looking to make that connection, what you're going to want to do is first things first, we just want to validate that connection's there. So all I'm doing is heading down to that gear icon, apps and API. And then here we want to make sure that profile's on here for the Skyslope. If you want to manage profiles, that's how you can see any current profiles. Or if you want to add on one, that's how you can add one on. We also have an article for it. But when we're looking at that property, oh, cool. Awesome. Did you click on the More tab? From here, you'd click on Skyslope. And then if it wasn't associated, this one's associated with .loop. Let me see if I can grab another one. When we want to make that association, it's just a matter of going to the More tab and then selecting either Skyslope or .loop. Again, I don't have a Skyslope integration on this, so I'm going to click on .loop. Here we have the ability to link it to a property that's already existing in Skyslope, or it would be exporting this property out to Skyslope. And that's how we make that connection. And then from there, just like Matthew said, when we're looking at that particular document, if we wanted to push a document over, let's say someone emailed one into us and we need to push it over into Skyslope, it's just a matter of clicking on this little drop down as long as there's a file there. And then here it would say upload to Skyslope instead of upload to .loop. So click on that. And then it'll ask me, okay, what folder do we want to select it and put it into? If there was already in a folder, it would have that folder selected there. Here it's saying create a folder, add it to one. Alrighty. We've kind of gone through quite a bit of questions. Are there any more questions or anything else that we want to see as far as anything that I've sparked? Any more questions in regards to the integrations or intake forms or property triggers? If we wanted to, I mean, I can build out a basic property trigger with you guys right now if you'd like. Maybe something for our intro emails. Cool. So we still have about 30 minutes left. We've got quite a number of you guys now. So I'll go ahead and just take a look at the property triggers. I think that would be fun to kind of see from beginning to end how someone might build it out. So what we'll do is we're going to head over to our little hammer icon here. We're going to go down to templating, and then we're going to get into the trigger templates. So trigger templates, like I said, you can create a number of different types of trigger templates. If you're on the Grow and the Pro plan, you can create trigger templates for the for your task triggers and for your intake forms. Then when you're on the scale plan, you can create those property triggers. We do have another question. Let me see what that is. Is there a way to add contact rules via property template? Use case moving from, so no, contact rules are purely associated with the different party members that are working on that transaction. When we're talking about adding property templates, and let me read the question out loud. Sorry about that, guys. Is there a way to add contact rules via a property template? Use case moving from a listing to under contract. So contact rules are always associated with a person, right? When we're talking about, adding them to the intake form, we're saying put that person into this particular role so that when we look at it on the property, we see those people in those particular roles. When we're looking at property templates, the only things that we can bring over is going to be your triggers, tasks, fields, documents, or date templates, right? It's not going to bring over party members onto that. When we're looking at that particular property, if we convert this from, let's say it was a listing to under contract, we can bring on, you can create groups of contacts that you need to bring on. So this might be a solution for you instead of it coming on via, it wouldn't be able to come on via the property template, but maybe you create, a assigned contact group, and you bring on a group of people, attorneys. Looks like I have a group of inspectors, lenders, the Smiths group. So you can have them come on like this. This would be a quick way to bring on a group of people. But as far as for adding them to property templates, that's not going to be a case. You have a follow-up. Okay. The issue is when it's a listing, you only care about the listing agent and the seller. Once under contract, you need a buyer, buyer's attorney, and buyer's agent and attorney. Correct. But when we're talking about adding contact roles to a property, there's always going to need to be a person associated with that, right? So when we convert it from a listing to an under contract, you're going to need to get those party members' information, and then either, we can create the contact right here and there. We can assign that buyer role to them right there. Or, like I said, if you already have them kind of grouped up, you can assign a group here. We could also search for those contacts if they already exist in your database. So there's still going to be a situation where you're going to want to add on or type in or add on those party members. So if anyone else is doing it where they fill out their listing intake form, and then they have that listing, and then it goes under contract, and they duplicate it and they apply a property template, when they add on the party members here, it's a matter of creating those contacts either through this, or we're searching for those contacts. Oh, no worries. TCs tend to forget to add everyone. I'll see if contact groups can help. But yeah, that's usually the suggestion that I have. The other thing that you might consider doing is when we're talking about converting it, maybe you have, and again, I don't know what your process looks like. I don't know if you have any, it sounds like, Ken, I know that you're on the scale plan. So maybe when you go through and you add it on there, maybe you need some sort of alert to remind them, right? When we have our intake forms, thankfully, when an intake form is submitted, we have this little pop-up here that can kind of remind us to take care of certain things. We also have those internal details. When we make a clone of something or we apply a property template, we're kind of removing that. So let me think on different ways that we can kind of create some sort of reminder. I'd want to see what your setup is right now and what makes the most sense. Maybe it's, I'm not sure if you're using any tasks, but maybe you do have a task that's at the top and it's critical and it's due the same day as, you guys go under contract or contract is accepted, and have something pop up there. If you want to, just trying to think of ways that you can have some sort of alert or reminder to come up for your TCs if we're just, applying a property template. So we're removing that intake form. So let me think on that. Okay, so we have another one. Our agents are licensed in different states. Should I create a new team for each state? It depends. It depends. So when we're talking about creating the different teams with an open to close, so I'm going to head down to our little gear icon. We're going to go into organization and users, and we're going to take a look at the teams. In this example, I don't have very many crazy teams. I just got a group sessions buy side and a listing side. So for you, when you're dealing with different states and we're talking about different teams is just a way that we can organize the different information. So if you have specific TCs that work with specific agents, and those specific agents are in specific states, and you want to pull reports to see that kind of stuff, then maybe it does make sense to have a specific team for that. When we're talking about teams and agents, we can have it that this agent, for example, when we're talking about them being able to fill out that intake form, here you can choose what that team is, that team user, the brokerage, and then, the time zone. So I can see how maybe you would want to have that organized in a way that, which state is which and who it belongs to. But if your processes aren't, if you don't need to organize the rest of your database based off of those processes, then it doesn't really make sense to create individual teams. The main use case I could see, if you wanted to say, this is California team, this is Texas team, this is Wisconsin team, is when we go to the task pipeline, you can sort it based off of those. So that would be the only use case where I would think, maybe we do need different teams. If you wanted to say, well, this TC for this week is just taking care of all of the California contracts. And this team member, even though they take care of all of the states, they're only taking care of Texas or something like that. So if you wanted to create, specific snapshots on your task pipeline or your trigger pipeline, that's the only time that I can think that teams might need to be delineated out into states. Jill, Matthew, can you guys think of a time that teams and states, that you would need an individual team for each state?
We didn't for ours. However, if maybe you got, a compliance person that only handles one state and a different compliance person for a different state, if that compliance role is going to be a different person, then maybe, or whatever that role is, I would think. Our people did it across the board, so we didn't separate that out that way. But I would think maybe if those roles are going to be to a different team member, then yes.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I didn't think of that. So yeah, that would be another case where we might want to create specific teams if we wanted to make it that one user only sees the compliance or whatever it is tasks that are only associated with that specific team that takes care of that specific state. Yeah, that's a good point. Skyslope has different documents for different states. Is that related to the original? We have different documents requirements through Skyslope for different states. Yeah, so the teams won't really determine what documents can or cannot come in. It's going to be based off of whether or not you're either exporting that particular sorry, I keep clicking on the wrong one. You're either exporting that particular, property to Skyslope, or you're linking it to a property, but the teams don't necessarily they're not going to restrict you from uploading any types of documents. It just kind of depends on, if you have a compliance person, like Jill was saying, who needs to only see specific data or specific stuff in open and close. That's the only time where maybe you want to create this is the California buyers team. And this particular person only takes care of California documents. And so they're going to be assigned to that team. They're going to have that role assigned. And then when they look at the properties, they're only going to see the tasks or whatever it is that's assigned to them on the property. Ken, the process is what you said: intake form for the listing, duplicate under contract, and add property template. Yep. So I'm thinking that, you fill out the intake form, you go under contract, you duplicate it. When you duplicate a property, and I'm just going to grab this one because it has a lot of data on it, right? Whenever we want to duplicate a property, I'm going to click on this little drop down and we're going to actually just duplicate it together. These are the following that will be duplicated. So the fields, documents, contacts, and notes. I'm wondering if before you duplicate, maybe you have a process where, and again, it's really hard to restrict it within open to close. I would probably have something where maybe you have some sort of reminder for your TCs to remember to add on the contacts before you duplicate, because this could be an option, is that they add it on just before they duplicate. Maybe the steps before they duplicate is going to the contacts, creating the contacts, adding on the buyer, adding on the buyer's agent, adding on the attorney. From there, you could have something like that, because again, as we saw, it does duplicate that. Now, if it's an after the fact thing, when we duplicate this particular property, I'm going to do it so that way we can kind of see, everyone sees what it looks like. So you can see here, we still have all the field data here. If we head over to the documents, we still have all of the documents here. And if we head over to the contacts, we still have all the contacts, right? So I'm wondering if maybe the other thing that you can do is when you do this portion, maybe we know before we apply a property template, your part of your guys' process is double check that we have all the contacts associated appropriately here. But that would be that's a really good point though, Ken, since you said that they do forget to add, the buyers and the buyer's agent. This is part of the reason why we do not have the automation that you were looking for, where I filled out a field and it should send this out, because what if your TCs do end up forgetting that buyer and they need to send a document to them, or they need to ask for a signature, and that buyer was never added and that email went automatically. And so the person who should have received it never got it because they weren't on the property. So I hope that all of you guys can kind of see the reasons why. Now, that doesn't mean that further down the line, that won't become a thing. It just right now, that's not an option right now in open to close. So I'm wondering if at this point, before you apply the property template or when you apply the property template, if you're really not heavy on tasks, right? Because for the most part, when we go to a property, it's going to have like the task templates, right? Our default communication tab is going to be our tasks. So I'm wondering if when you duplicate it and you apply that property template, if you're not really using tasks, maybe you do have just one task right here that says reminder. Don't forget to add the buyer, the buyer's agent, and the attorney, or the other party members that you need to add onto it, right? And it can be marked as a critical, pinned task that's due the same day as, whatever field it is that you're using. It could be contract acceptance date or under contract date. Maybe you have a status that's there. Whatever it is that whatever dates you're using after you have that property template get applied. Something like that could be a solution. I'll have to think on it and think of what another thing is that you can do, because, when we're talking about property templates, that's just adding on different templates. It's not necessarily adding on any additional rules. That page that I was looking at where it says, add in these specific fields. If I go over to our intake forms, this page here, this comes up because of the intake forms. When we're duplicating and applying a property template, we're removing all of that. So I'll have to think on it more and maybe resource some of my teammates. I mean, Jill, Matthew, any ideas on what kind of reminders or what kind of prompts you could use to remind someone to make sure to keep all party members on there?
The only thing I'm thinking is when you bring in that property template, to have a task template for contacts with subtasks of, add buyer, add buyer's agent, add lender, add title.
Yeah,
you do that if you're on that plan.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a great idea too. Yeah, that you have that one task. And I'll just add a task to kind of show what Jill's talking about. We'll say that it's due today. Add contacts, right? So we add on that. Oh, I said close. Submit. Let's go ahead and add that on there. So let me see. Let me look for my add contacts task. So here, it can be a critically pinned task. So it's at the very top. When I remove this, we'll see here it's at the very top. When Jill's talking about those subtasks, we're talking about the tasks here. So maybe we have a subtask that says add buyer, add buyer's agent, add attorney, attorney. There we go. And then we say that all tasks need to be completed or need to be checked off before they can be completed. And so now when we try to check off this task, it literally fights us and it won't let us do it. So if you're not really utilizing task templates and you just have that one task there as a reminder, don't forget to add your contacts, and they try to check it off, it's not going to go until they click on the subtasks and they say, oh, these are the people. Yeah, let me head over to my contacts. Let me add on those party members. And then eventually, as they start to get used to that, I apply my property template, I add in my contacts, then hopefully that becomes less of an issue. And then you can kind of remove this task, right? A lot of it is down to what we're used to, or what do they call it? Muscle memory we have when we're running our transactions. Maybe we need this task as a reminder for the first couple months. And then after that, they're like, hey, I'm putting on the contacts every single time. Like, I add on the contacts and then I come to the task and I have to check it off and it's cumbersome. And you can go, awesome. Sounds like now that you have the muscle memory to remember to keep those contacts on there, we can remove this task for you. And then that's just a matter of removing it from whatever task template you have, type of thing. Alrighty, so we are 10 minutes till. I kind of just want to talk about the different kind of support that we have in open to close for everyone that's here. If you guys are looking for our support center and you're in open to close, you're going to go over to this little person icon. You're going to click on support center and boom, you're in our support center. You can type in a ton of different stuff. I typed in message like this earlier. Oh, maybe I typed it in a little bit cleaner than that. But if you start to type in what you're looking for, so let's say messaging, you'll see now that we have this list of different articles. So if you're looking for anything and it's not in here, the next option that you have is you have our chat support. So down here at the bottom, you can click on chat support. We can click on this, and then we can chat live with any of the representatives. That's my little face right there. And that's some of our other support users here as well. We also have the ability to search for our help articles here as well. So usually it's showing you kind of what the top top things are that you might be looking in. I know that I personally have been looking at these recently, and that's why it's showing me these articles. You can also go to your messages as well. So if you've been chatting with us in the past and we shared some really good information, you want to go back to it, you want to review it. If you click on that little book icon down at the bottom and click on messages, here you're going to see your all of your past messages with us, and you can click on those and you can kind of scroll through them or see what messages we've sent out to you guys. So here, let me see. I think that most of these messages are going to be just announcements that we've kind of pushed out. Let me see if this one's an example. Yeah, of course. Thank you guys for joining. Other than that, I mentioned it in the beginning, we have quite a few number of people now. If you guys are looking for, webinar trainings, maybe you just want to focus on a very specific part of the system, from our homepage, you can go to webinars. Here we can see our group product tour. That's where we go over different, we have like a product tour of open to close. So you'll learn a little bit more about the different features that we have. We have our Wednesday workshops, obviously. And then below that, we have our webinars that we have. Right now, if I scroll down, we just completed this morning session, emails, text messages, and messaging this afternoon. So in about an hour, we're going to be going over Fields 101. So we're going to take a deep dive into Fields. Next week, we're going to be reviewing task templates in the morning and task triggers or triggers in the morning. And then in the afternoon, next week, we're going to be covering contacts. Our webinars happen every single Wednesday. So if you're looking for any sort of those trainings, this is where you can find it. If you guys are interested in signing up for these, you're going to click on sign up. It'll take you to that registration page. If this time doesn't work for you, you can always choose a different time. Each one of these classes is based off of kind of like a 4-week schedule. So we just restarted that schedule. So if you come and join us at Contacts 101, you're still in the beginning parts, right? I tried to make most of these training. Oh, I'm sorry, actually not Contacts 101. It's Fields 101 this afternoon. I tried to make most of these trainings that anyone can jump in at any point and you can learn that part of the system in depth. But I'm always taking feedback. So if you guys are like, oh, it'd be great if we could learn about this when you're talking about Fields or learn about this, let me know. I'm open to any kind of feedback. Awesome. So we're going to wait a couple more minutes. If anyone has any last minute questions, feel free to enter them now. And we will end on time. So I'll go ahead and keep it. Yeah, absolutely. So all I did was go to opentoclose.com. I have it already kind of open in a tab, but if you just go to open to close, you search up our page. Here's our home page. From here, you're going to go to the little learn tab. We have our help guides, and then we have our webinars. And then from here, you can see our webinars. I've kind of showed this trick to quite a number of my clients, so I'll show it to you guys. If you ever want to search this page and you're looking for a very specific thing, you can use the Control F or Command F on your keyboard. It's going to open up a little search bar up at the top. And if I start to type in smart blocks, here you can see that we have them listed out. So if you're like, I'm looking for a class, I just want to learn about smart blocks, you can type in smart blocks to learn it here. If you're like, oh, I want to learn about the task templates, here's another example. So this is going to be the class that we're going to be going over in the afternoon next week, or I believe in the morning next week, because I think that we have 2 versions of it. We have a morning class, evening class. So here you can see task templates, and you can kind of click on our sign up link and go, does this time work for me? Type of thing. Awesome. Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this intake form. Didn't even realize I had one open. Any other questions that you guys want to go to? Yeah, thank you. Of course. I'm glad that you guys asked. Let me know if there's anything else that, you guys have questions on as regards to like webinars or upcoming stuff. Yes, those classes are free. Yeah, so all of those classes that you guys sign up, the webinars are free. Cool. I usually, it kind of depends on how the webinars go. If we've got a big group, we usually stick to the topics. But if we have a smaller group, depending, it kind of becomes a one-on-one training with you guys. I might just promote you guys, and then we might just end up having a open conversation about your system and talk about some strategy on how to specifically build out your system. So they're pretty cool classes, and they're good to come to if you're just looking for that. I want a deep dive walkthrough of what we need to take care of. In my system type of thing. So we'll leave. Are the classes in the morning the same as the afternoon classes? Not every single week. No. So it does work off of a rotation when we're looking at it. So we started with doing Fields in the morning, and then we did text messages in the afternoon. This was 4 weeks ago that we did this. So that's why, you know, I know this page is a little confusing. That's why I kind of wanted to scroll down to show you guys where we're at right now. And we'll probably do this before and at the end of every Wednesday workshop. So this morning we covered our emails, text messages, and messaging 101. It was a recorded call. Depending on how the QAing of that call goes, if we think that it was good enough, we'll post it. If not, we'll go ahead and wait until we have like a perfect call, you know, a perfect webinar that we're kind of looking for. This afternoon, we'll be going over fields. And then next week, we're going to be going over the morning class session for tasks and triggers. So if you guys are looking for what's going to happen up next, it's going to be this morning tasks and triggers. And like I said, if you guys use that Control F and you're searching for it, here you can see, you know, if I press enter, it's going to take me to that particular one. Yeah, no worries, no worries. And then the following, you know, evening class, we're going to be going over contacts. So awesome. Awesome. Any other questions on the system or anything else that we can help you guys out with? Go ahead and enter it in the chat now. If not, if there's stuff that comes up afterwards, you're like, oh man, I wish I would have asked this. Always feel free to help reach out to us at help@opentoclose.com or chat with us in your application here by just selecting send a message. Cool. So I'll just wait a couple more minutes. I want to wait until exactly the end of the class if there's any more questions that kind of sneak in there. Tasks and triggers class is only available on 6/7. So you might be looking at the afternoon session. So it could be possibly that afternoon session. The one that you're going to want to look for next week is going to be the morning session. And if we click on sign up for the morning session for next week, that's going to be on May 10th. This afternoon, we're going to be going over the fields. I don't think I've registered for that one yet. And that's going to be today. So it could be that you need to look for the morning session for tasks and triggers. So whenever you guys use this Control F here at the top and we're searching for tasks and triggers here, if I press enter, here's where it says morning session. And then if I press enter again, let me press enter into here again. It should take us to, or here I can click on this little drop down. Here's the afternoon session. So you might have selected sign up for the afternoon sessions. And that's why it said it was due in June as opposed to May. So just scroll back down onto that page and you'll see the morning session, and the morning session is going to happen next week. Yeah, of course, of course. I know that this page is a little confusing. We're troubleshooting it right now. We really wanted to get the classes started and get people signing up and kind of create some buzz around it first. We will most likely start to have some email campaigning with like, this is what's coming up this week if you want to sign up. We're also planning on posting to Facebook as well. So we'll probably post every single Tuesday saying, this is the classes that are happening tomorrow in the morning and in the afternoon. Here are the registration links. So it'll make it a little bit easier if you guys are on our Facebook group. But this is always here just in case, you know, let's say you can't go to the morning next week, but you can make it to the afternoon in 3 weeks or something like that. We're kind of trying to make it that it's open. Once we get to the bottom of this page, so here, creating properties, we're going to go right back up to the top again. So that's why we're kind of trying to figure out the best solution for this. And it's, again, this is just what we have right now to get it out there. Awesome. Alrighty, guys, we are a minute till. Are there any other questions that we can kind of go through or answer? Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining today. I had a lot of fun going through all of your guys' questions. If there was anything that you guys needed clarification on, absolutely feel free to reach out. I definitely want and I'm going to go back to what's it called? Sarah. No, it wasn't Sarah. Was it Sarah? Who was it that had this? Yes, Sarah, if you want to send in that Loom video into support in regards to your property triggers and what you were seeing, I would love to take a deeper look into that and kind of help you troubleshoot through it and see what we can find. And then if we find something that we can replicate, maybe on next Wednesday workshop, depending on if I'm leading it or not, we can kind of go through that and we can talk about what we did to troubleshoot it, because I love stuff like that. Or maybe if I create a neutral enough Loom video, we can post it to the Facebook group. You know, troubleshooting is always a fun thing within Open to Close. But awesome, guys. Well, again, thank you so much for joining today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. If you're coming to Fields 101, I will see you guys in an hour. Make sure to drink your water and, rest, take a deep breath, and I will see you guys then.